Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 788, and today's date is October 11th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, as we can see, companies are continually laying off more and more people. We understand that the U.S. government got rid of that department that counts layoffs because, of course, they don't want anyone to know this. They don't want this included in their numbers. They want to keep everything manipulated. But we use a private company, which is Challenger Gray and Christmas. And we're seeing a lot more layoffs coming down the pike here. I mean, Twitter is announcing they're going to be laying off many people. They have a total number of employees, about 4,100. The planned layoffs would affect all Twitter departments and are likely to mostly affect engineering, and that accounts for half of their staff. We see Standard Chartered. They're laying off 1,000 senior staff. Deutsche Bahn, up to 5,000 employees. Joann Fabrics, 103 employees. And if we go back to this year, 2015, we're looking at 200, 300, 400,000 jobs gone. Just like that. If we go back to June of 2014, we are approaching 1 million jobs. And as we can see, this is not going to slow down whatsoever. As the economy contracts, as more and more people lose their jobs, it's going to get tougher and rougher. So what is the U.S. doing? What is the U.S. government doing? What is the central bank doing? They're making more. That's exactly what they're doing. And they're trying to pass all the laws that benefit themselves. And one of them is the TPP. And this weekend we see that in Germany there is a huge protest. About 250,000 Germans protested Obama's free trade deal. And we know that this trade deal, because it's kept a secret, is not going to benefit the people. But Obama's out there saying, no, everyone will be able to read this trade deal. Congress in America, they will have months to read every word. As soon as you get it across my desk and I sign it, everybody can read it. Well, wouldn't it be better if Congress and the American people read it before it hit his desk? Before it was already passed in Congress? Because if we read this, this would not go anywhere because this does not benefit the people whatsoever. We see in Afghanistan, the hospital that was hit in Kunduz, well, it looks like the U.S. military aircraft that attacked the hospital made at least 5 passes over the hospital before dropping explosives. Now, what's very interesting about all of this, on top of the roof of the hospital, there were 2 flags draped across the roof. And they indicated that this was a medical facility and it was Doctors Without Borders. So Doctors Without Borders is saying this was deliberately targeted because it was the only structure around the entire area. If you look around the area, there is nothing around the hospital. So it was really the only target there, and they knew that this was Doctors Without Borders. It was a medical facility, and they bombed it. Now the U.S. is saying, okay, we made a mistake. A couple people died, but it's funny, when other countries hit civilians, they make a huge deal about it. Here they call it collateral damage. And of course, the other countries that are hitting civilians, they can't even prove it. This was proved. So now the U.S. is going to make payments to the families of the airstrike. So they spent millions of dollars bombing the hospital, and now they're going to take millions of dollars to pay for the families. But it doesn't bring back their loved ones. They are gone. Now we see there's a company out there that created a new device that can bring down drones. The Anti-UAV Defense System, AUDS, cost about $1.2 million. And engineers claim that all they need to do is point this device at the drones. Doesn't matter their size, doesn't matter what kind they are. it will bring them down from 8 kilometers away. It will halt its flight in 15 seconds, and the drone is destroyed. It comes falling to the earth, and it's done. So why is this important? Well, we know the U.S. uses drones in Pakistan, Yemen, Libya, Lebanon, Iraq, and many other countries. And once these countries start purchasing this device, the drone wars, they're going to come to an end. So the millions, or I should say the billions of dollars the U.S. invested in the drones, most likely they're going to be absolutely worthless. Now, it looks like the U.S., U.K., and the other coalition forces, they are pushing a confrontation with Russia as hard as they possibly can. I mean, Turkey is out there saying they're being harassed by Syrian warplanes, by Russian warplanes. And of course, NATO is out there leading the charge. And we see that in the news, there's a huge propaganda piece out there saying that Turkey shot down a Russian jet. Now, of course, we can't cite any sources. They say they were anonymous, and nobody has information on this whatsoever. And this looks like it's more propaganda coming out of the US, UK, NATO, you name it, to push the agenda that we need to get into war with Russia. They want an incident. They're pushing as hard as they possibly can. Now, Putin is out there. He is saying that there's going to be absolutely no ground troops in Syria. Now, we know he called up about 150,000 troops in Russia. But at this point, they have special forces in Syria right now, but no full-on ground support. And we'll have to watch this very carefully because this could change, in a split second. It depends on what happens in there. Right now, they're using their air power, and they are hitting the Islamic State targets, which is the proxy army for the United States government central bankers, and they are winning. But I see all over the corporate media, the U.S. government is continually saying that the Islamic State is making gains. It doesn't matter what the Russia's doing. It looks like Russia's using their airstrikes for cover for the Islamic State, making them advance. Basically, if you really think about it, this is everything the United States was doing. Russia's in there, and they are destroying the Islamic State. Now, there was a leaked record explaining how the proxy army for the United States government central bankers received their funds. They're saying 27% came from the oil sales in Syria. All those regions, they filled up the tankers, they shipped them off, and they had buyers all across Europe. But what's very interesting about this leaked document is that a lot of their funding came from taxes and confiscation. Once the proxy army went into certain areas inside Syria, they taxed the people and they confiscated their property. And that made up of about 23.7% from taxes and 44.7% from confiscation of property. And remember, this is the proxy army for the United States government central bankers. Look what they're doing to the country, the people inside that country. They're pretty much doing it here in the United States. But they're trying to convince everyone it's for our own good. Now, there has been ISIS communications that were intercepted, and there is a growing panic among the proxy army, and the Russian airstrikes are pretty much decimating the entire force, and they're being pushed back, and things really do not look good. And the United States government central bankers, the UK, NATO are getting very, very nervous about this, because pretty soon there is going to be no proxy army inside Syria. And we see that the elite forces from Syria are getting ready and prepared to take back a lot of the towns. The newly formed corps of the Syrian army has between 60 and 100,000 troops, and there are reports coming out that they are preparing a massive and significant operations in the northern parts of Syria following Russia's recent bombings. So they're moving in and they're weeding out all of the proxy army, the Free Syrian Army, Al-Qaeda, you name it. It's one big push to get them out of the country. Now, there are reports here that Baghdadi was killed in Iraq, and the Iraq military statement saying that the country's Air Force hit their convoy. He was on his way to a meeting. They also hit where the meeting was taking place, and the reports are saying that he didn't survive. But we see that Baghdadi is really not Islamist. He's a Mossad agent. His real name is Elliot Scheiman. And basically, this is what we've been seeing all along. A lot of these Islamists, these leaders, are either CIA, Mossad, or other type of agents. And this is all created by the U.S. government, by Israel, by the UK, to convince everyone that this is a real terrorist group. And we're finding out, which we already always knew, but the rest of the world is finding out, that the United States government central bankers will not join up with Russia to fight terror. And everyone should be scratching their head saying, this doesn't make sense. Now, Russia is out there and they want an explanation of why British and NATO pilots have been given the green light to take drastic action against Russian fighter jets if they come under threat during missions over Iraq. What? Iraq invited Russia in there, and they're all going after the same enemy, right? The Islamic State. And NATO and England are saying that they can take drastic action. Well, it doesn't look like they're going after the same enemy. It looks like NATO and England are trying to provoke Russia. They want an incident. And we can see right now, Russia, the defense ministry, has demanded a clarification of why is this happening. And we all have to ask, what is the end game here? And the end game, as we know, it's to start World War III. And this is where we are headed with all of this. And as Russia continually bombs the proxy army and destroys them and removes them, and the Syrian armed forces come in and sweep around and through the country and remove the proxy army, the propaganda is going to grow from the US government, from the UK government, from the coalition forces, and they're going to continually push and push to get the war started. Now, insider Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former chief of staff to Colin Powell, notes that the U.S. is exhibiting all the signs of a failing empire. And here is a list of his specific points to let you know that this empire of the United States government central bankers is coming to an end. He says, maintaining standing armies instead of disbanding military forces between wars, using more mercenary forces than citizen troops, spending disproportionately large amounts of blood and treasure in order to counter threats on the status quo, which simply exasperates the threat against the empire, going ethically and morally bankrupt, ending up having bankers and financiers end up running the real power, suffering great hiccups in finance and trade. The leaders no longer really believe in or follow the ideals of the founders. The U.S. is also following the age-old recipe for imperial decline by creating unsustainable levels of inequality, incurring staggering levels of debt to finance war and luxury goods, debasing its currency, military overspending, runaway corruption, apathy, and greed. And we are seeing all of these things right now. The system that the U.S. government central bankers is based on, the central bank system, is coming to an end. And you can see everything they do is about absolutes. There's no diplomacy, there's no discussion. It's you do it our way or it's war. This is what is happening right now. And we can see in Syria, in Iraq, with England, with the United States, they want an incident in this area to start the war. Actually, we've been in the war. They just want the big bang to say, okay, here it is. We're officially in World War III. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.